I'm Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of August and the solar eclipse that we have in Leo on the 11th. Now, we're in a period of intense energy. I'm sure you feel that yourselves. Many of you may have felt quite a sort of energy wipeout at the total lunar eclipse. I certainly did, and it's something that many of us are sensitive to, those big peaks of the moon cycle. So it's intense for many reasons. We have unusually 3 eclipses in this eclipse season as opposed to the normal 2. We had 2 in July, and we're going to have this additional solar eclipse in Leo in August that I'm going to be talking about. But we have a lot of other aspects as well that make this period so powerful. It's a very fast-moving period of change. It's partly because we have a lot of retrograde planets. We have Mercury until the 19th, Mars till the 27th of the month, Chiron, Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus will be joining that retrograde party on the 7th, which I'll also be talking about. So retrograde energy turns us inwards before we can move forwards. It wants us to be introspective. It wants us to pull back. And yet there are a lot of very strong outward aspects at the same time. I mean, Mars as a simple principle of energy is very direct. Sets a goal, I want to get to the top of that mountain, bingo, off I go. Nothing's going to hold me back. But when it's retrograde, it becomes more complex. But Mars is also very strong, as I detailed in the last video. It's because it's retrograde, it's closer to the Earth, apart from the year 2003, than it's been in the last 60,000 years. It's come as close as 35 million miles away from the Earth, and that's still a huge amount, as opposed to its average 140 million miles. So it's been much closer to the Earth, and when you think of Mars symbolism as heat, fires, attack, that sort of thing, you can see it's been remarkable. Certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, we've had a really record-breaking heat wave, even in countries like Siberia. We've had heat-related deaths in many countries. We've had terrible tragic fires in around Athens and California and other countries too. So we felt the heat. We felt the heat of that proximity of Mars. But as I say, it's complex because of all the retrograde energy. Mars is also strong because it's in that square to Uranus. So that square to Uranus, Mars in Aquarius and Uranus in early Taurus, they're both at 2 degrees of Aquarius Taurus here. It can feel very sudden, unpredictable change, volatility. It's very speedy. Both planets are to do with speeding up. It's very fast moving, but it can go in twists and turns, different directions. So we're dealing with a complex period of energy when things can go either way, and have done. If you watch in terms of world events, have there been twists and turns in terms of world policy on various things, or statements on various things? Yes, they absolutely have, and you might have experienced this in your personal life too. So that is going to continue because on the 1st of August, that square between Mars and Uranus, which is going to run until the 1st of October this year, actually becomes exact. And when an aspect becomes exact, we tend to feel it more strongly. So again, the symbolism of volatility, unpredictability, the unexpected, sudden radical changes of direction, can be surprises or shocks. There can be sudden opportunities that come in for you out of the blue that you weren't expecting. So see where Mars and Uranus are falling in your chart. They're very associated, for instance, with cyber attacks, because Uranus and Aquarius, where Mars is, are very associated with technology, but equally they're associated with technological innovation, new ways to do old things. So very positive in that respect, and also very positive in terms of your own upgrades, energy upgrades, consciousness upgrades, because Uranus is to do with the superconscious. Uranus rules Aquarius. Both are linked to this higher vibration. Uranus, the high vibration of Mercury, and so some people consider it the mind of God. connecting into the mind of God and getting flashes of inspiration and ideas that can help to shift your consciousness. So it can be very, very positive from that point of view. So although the energy is complex, there are many positives to this. And I'd also say, in terms of moving projects forward, because of this complex retrograde energy, particularly Mercury and Mars, the personal planets, being retrograde, you might have felt that whatever projects you're working on, see where Uranus and Mars fall in your chart currently, it's hard to move them forwards. They keep kind of hitting blocks or getting stuck. So don't keep pushing. Use this as a terrifically productive period of planning, of strategy, to enrich your thinking, to go back over Mercury retrograde, go back over your thinking, and then you're in a much better position to move forward, to push forward with those projects at the end of August, because Mercury goes direct on the 19th of the month, Mars goes direct on the 27th of the month, and that's the important one really. After the 27th of the month, you can start to push things forward much more easily and freely than you have been able to in the last month or so. So this exact square between Mars and Uranus on the 1st is going to be very high energy, very high vibration. It's followed on the 2nd of the month by the moon in Aries coming to square Pluto. That can bring up intense feelings in us, intense emotion, intense assertion, even aggression amongst some people. So remember to step back from any aggressive situations, because if we leap in, as Mars and Uranus always want us to do, because they're fast, they're quick in reacting, it just tends to energize the negative energy. It doesn't help us, it doesn't help the other people involved in that situation. So always keep your calm, always step back, keep your peace, and think, what would my best self do in this situation? And that's always the best course of action. So it could be quite a wild ride in this first half of August. We've got this exact square between Mars and Uranus on the 1st. On the 2nd, we've got Moon in Aries square to Pluto. And then on the 7th of the month, we have Uranus, which coming to stationary retrograde, to be the 6th planet in that retrograde lineup. Now, Uranus has been moving, well, it's barely been moving, that's the point, it's barely been moving. It's been at 2 degrees of Taurus all the way through July. It will be at 2 degrees of Taurus all the way through August. So it's kind of drilling down on that 2-degree point. So if you have any planets or angles in the fixed signs between 0 and 4 degrees of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you may really be feeling this energy strongly. See where 2 degrees of Taurus falls in your chart. That's where transiting Uranus is right now. And you will want to have a feeling of freedom, newness, variety. Uranus wants to break up staleness. It wants to break up anything which has become deadening, which has become routine. So in that area of your life, you might feel very restless, which is a good thing, because it will create change. It will create breakthrough to a different state of being. So try not to resist that change, because if you don't initiate the change can very often come quite suddenly and surprisingly from the outside, because the music has to play. It has to be expressed in some way. So restless energy and potentially quite a wild ride of energy through this first half of August. So keep your peace. As I've said in the last few videos, keep your calm, stay at the hub of the wheel, because there's going to be an awful lot happening out there in the world. And I often think, actually, in terms of experiencing a sense of chaos when a lot is happening in the world, it's almost as if you're walking down an incredibly busy New York street at rush hour, and there's just so many cars, so many people, and if you're sensitive, that can feel really overwhelming energetically. But if you can shift your perspective, if you can, say, take a bird's eye view and extend the period of time and watch almost over a period of days as you feel almost a rhythmic beat of ebb and flow through the days of those peaks and troughs in the activity of that New York street, it looks very different. You're part of a bigger picture, if you like, a bigger perspective. And this is something I very much want to expand on in a moment. Okay, but the solar eclipse happens just 4 days after Uranus becomes stationary retrograde. Now, whenever a planet is stationary, its symbolism is magnified. So think of all the symbolism of Uranus. Surprises, out of the blue opportunities for you, sudden radical changes, expect the unexpected. It can be eruptive in terms of volcanoes or earthquakes. It can be natural phenomenon. It can be political earthquakes. We've seen quite a lot of those recently. So sudden radical shifts that are very fast and can often change the direction. So be very aware of those. And again, it's very hard for astrologers to predict what they are, because Uranus is the planet of surprises. And you can bet on whatever astrologers think it's going to be, it won't be that, because there's always a rug pull effect with Uranus. It will always want to surprise you. So, solar eclipse at 18 degrees 41 minutes of Leo. This happens on the 11th of the month, only 4 days after that stationary retrograde. So the Uranus element is really strong in this, for another reason I'm going to mention in a moment. So, solar eclipse, it happens on the 11th at 2:57 a.m. Pacific and 10:57 a.m. UK time. Now, the reason Uranus is so strong in this is Uranus is tightly square to the transiting nodal axis. Transiting nodal axis is at 2 degrees of Leo Aquarius, 5 degrees of Leo Aquarius. Uranus is at 2 degrees of Taurus. So it is in a tight T-square to that transiting nodal axis. And so this is actually going to continue till the end of the year, but because it's involved very much with this solar eclipse, because it's so close to Uranus becoming stationary as well. Now, the transiting nodal axis is about our collective future destiny, where we're headed as a world, as a collective. Now, I mentioned in my last video on the total lunar eclipse that actions and decisions taken at this time are going to be particularly important for the future direction of the world. That's because the total lunar eclipse was a very powerful pivot point of endings and beginnings, because of Mars being locked into that total lunar eclipse, but also this effect of Uranus in a T-square to the transiting nodal axis. This is about, we could get some very different surprises or energies coming in, determined by the decisions that leaders are going to be making in terms of our future direction. So, and I would include August certainly in that same statement of the importance of this month in terms of the future direction. So, in addition to that, and I'm dealing with the yang energy first, and then we'll go on to the softer aspects. At this solar eclipse, we also have Pluto squaring Eris, the dwarf planet Eris. Now, Pluto is the planet of transformation. Eris is the dwarf planet of, she's the warrior goddess. She's the kind of female equivalent to Mars. But she's also the goddess of discord. And discord is to do with breaking down in order to build back up. And that's the symbolism of Pluto too. They're quite similar in their symbolism, because they're about transformation, they're about death and rebirth, breaking down to build up to a higher level of being. If you think of a tree that dies in a wood and falls over onto the earth, and it rots and decays and dies, but because of the rotting effect in the earth, it produces many new life forms in terms of tiny beetles, and eventually produces fertile soil for new growth to occur. So in a more dramatic sense, perhaps it's like the Tower card in the tarot. We are going through a huge period globally of transformation over the next few years. That will result in the breakdown and restructuring of governments, of powerful corporations, of the structure of society. It's a very big time over the next few years, and we are starting to see the undermining of institutions that may have been credible and trusted in the past. So again, thinking of that New York street, try and get a higher perspective on that. And again, I'm going to add to that in a moment to help you. So those are all the strong yang outward energies, but we also have some really beautiful, more subtle energies at this solar eclipse. And by the way, remember that a solar eclipse is a super big new moon. Super big new moon, a fantastic time to set a new intention for you. See where 18 of Leo falls in your chart and set your intention conditioned by the house area. If it falls in your 10th house and you're looking for a new job, can you set a very clear intention for that at the solar eclipse? If it's falling in your 11th house, do you want to build more different social networks? Again, a clear intention, because 18 of Leo falls in that house of social networks. So seeing where it falls has much more significant meaning for you than the general sense of what I'm talking about here. And if you don't know where this falls in your chart, because I get many times a day the what does it mean for me question. If you don't know what it means for you, if you check out this link above, that will take you to my store. You can download a free birth chart from my website, pamgregory.com, and get the 2-part tutorial video series, and that will explain everything you need to know about what this update means for you and any update I ever do. And it really starts you on a potentially lifelong journey of self-understanding, which is very exciting. So set a new intention for where this falls. Great opportunity to do that. But this is about heart energy. Leo is about living from the heart. It's about living from love. So I'd ask you, do you feel you are living from the heart? Or are you living from the chatter in the head, the monkey mind that the Buddhists talk about, that can so get in our way? And so often in my work with clients, I often find if they can shift from head to heart in their daily state of being, it absolutely transforms their world, because they're living from a state of compassion. And another wonderful technique I've mentioned several times is to breathe in and out through your heart, or imagine that you're breathing in and out through your heart, because this slows and deepens the breath. And the wonderful organization, the Heart Math Institute in America, has done some fabulous clinical work on the effect it has on our hearts, our physiology, and indeed our aura, and the strength and size of our aura. So it's such a great thing to do, but it comes from the heart as an intelligent organ. Okay. So let's look at the other more gentle aspects that we have at this solar eclipse. We have the ongoing trine between Jupiter and Neptune, which is really a beautiful aspect of connecting us to source, connecting us to oneness, to turn us inwards, to encourage us to just watch our breathing, or meditate, or just go quietly inside to hear that quiet whisper of the best guidance in all this outward hubbub of what may be happening in your world and in the bigger world. In addition to that, we have a very interesting, it's called a finger of fate or a finger of God. And what that means is the sun and moon are always together at a new moon or a solar eclipse. And together they are in quincunx to, on the one side, Neptune, and on the other side, Pluto. So it's like a very long, skinny triangle, if you like. Sun, Moon, Neptune, Pluto. Now this is really mystical, actually, particularly because it involves Neptune and Pluto, which together, they're quite otherworldly, they're quite ethereal, they deal with the paranormal, of seeing, feeling energy, and again, seeing things from a higher spiritual point of view. In addition, the sun and moon are not only conjunct Mercury, but also conjunct an asteroid called Pallas Athena. Now, I've mentioned Pallas Athena before. It's an asteroid very much connected to wisdom and creativity. And what Pallas Athena in its symbolism is particularly good at, you see it very strongly in the charts of mathematicians and astrologers, because what it's good at is looking at a massive detailed data and seeing the meaningful patterns in it, seeing from a higher point of view to spot the meaningful patterns. So I would really ask you to try and see what we're going through at the moment in a world sense, and perhaps in your own personal life, from a bigger perspective. And just to give you a flavour of this, because astrology is really quite brilliant in helping us understand how divine intelligence works in our life and how the repeating cycles of divine intelligence are constantly encouraging our growth. There's something called the metatonic eclipse cycle, and what that is that every 19 years, pretty much to the day, the eclipses will come back to the same degree. I wrote about this recently on social media and people found it very helpful. So, for instance, on the 28th of July 1999, 19 years ago, there was a lunar eclipse at 4 degrees of Aquarius. We have just had, on the 27th of July 2018, a total lunar eclipse at 4 degrees of Aquarius. Exactly the same degree, repeating 19 years ago. Also on the 11th of August 1999, we had a solar eclipse at 18 degrees of Leo. Coming up on the 11th of August in 2018, we have a solar eclipse at 18 degrees of Leo. Exactly the same degree. So, firstly, see where Leo Aquarius falls in your chart. That will trigger the memory, because it deals with specific areas of life. So like, trigger your memory. Was it relationship? Was it health? What was it? And go back to July, August 1999 and try and remember what was beginning for you then. Was it a relationship beginning that is now coming to an end, or perhaps moving on to another level in some way? Several of my clients, they developed an illness in July, August 1999, which is now coming to its resolution, July, August 2018. So it's a repeating either closure of the cycle or vortex. We always vortex upwards in our development. So, but it's climbing to a higher level. So when you can see very clearly that bigger point of view, that bird's eye view on that eclipse cycle in your own life, it really helps you understand how divine intelligence is constantly working. And I'd ask you not just to remember the events from 1999, was it relationship, was it health, was it career, was it study, what was taking place for you then. But I think even more deeply, who were you then? Who were you as a being? How were you living? And I'd like you to think about this heart energy. Were you living fully from the heart then, in integrity? Or is that something that you're stepping into much more fully right now, recognizing the importance of that? And I'd also, as a kind of theme for this, ask you to think about what has your soul's growth been over those 19 years, particularly relating to heart energy, Leo, but also in terms of what unique contribution you have made to the world, Aquarius, in those 19 years, and what new cycle is now beginning for your soul's growth this time around. That takes you to some quite deep places, I have to say, in thinking about that, even for myself as an astrologer, I have to say. So really do think, I've written a lot about this kind of thing in both my books. So if you're interested, check out my website, pamgregory.com. You can get the books from there. I have several tutorial videos to help you with your study. I also have a, getting longer by the month, 7,000 word monthly newsletter, which really links the astrology into important world events, so we can see astrology unfolding in the world at every moment. And that's a really great way to start to see the symbolism happening all the time and understand astrology better. So a lot going on, a very powerful month again in August, and just have a wonderful solar eclipse, big new beginning on the 11th of August. Don't forget to set your new intention, and thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.